Hello, everyone. We're going to get started right now. Thank you for being here today. We hope you're all healthy and safe during these times. With us today, we have attendees tuning in from Oklahoma, California, even Puerto Vallarta, and we look forward to hosting you physically in this space in the future. But for right now, we're getting creative. In all my years of sitting in the moderator chair, this is my first ever event in this format, and we are fully masked up and ready to take your questions. But first, a few housekeeping rules. This is a live event. We'll be taking live Q&A near the end of the conversation. All attendees are muted and video is off before then. The chat is open, so please be respectful in this space. And please post your questions in the chat throughout. I will call on you later on when we kick it to Q&A. So with that, let's get to it. Welcome to the Texas Innovation Center. My name is Ashley Jennings, and I serve as the Managing Director of the Texas Innovation Center. We're the official new venture and technology commercialization arm and leg of the University of Texas at Austin. And with us today, we are honored to have Dr. Ryan Hatcher of Lockheed Martin. Ryan serves as principal scientist at Lockheed, where he's a technology scout on the CTO's team. His goal is to identify companies who have technologies that align with strategically important technical gaps and engage those companies with internal stakeholders. Ryan joined Lockheed's Advanced Technology Labs in 2007, where he drove a broad portfolio of research programs in advanced sensors and electronics. In 2013, he joined Samsung's Advanced Logic Laboratory, where he was on the look-ahead team for the Logic Foundry, focusing on advanced logic technologies, before pivoting back to Lockheed in 2019, where he's been ever since. Ryan received his BA and MS degrees in physics from Wake Forest University, an MS in computer science from Vanderbilt University, an MS in computer science from Vanderbilt, and a PhD in physics from Vanderbilt University. And you also have something like 25 patents is what I had counted, but I was wrong. He's on the verge of, I think, 35 patents with some pending right now. And so welcome, Ryan Hatcher. And I'd like Ryan to start off today by just asking about your story and what drove you to get a PhD in physics in this world that you now sit in.
Sure. So, yeah, it's a few twists and turns in the path. I wanted to be a physician going into undergrad, like a medical doctor, and it's funny like how just the random events, force you down one path versus another. So I was literally in the car on the way down to school, and I'm thumbing through the course catalog, and they have descriptions of each of the majors. And I figured I'd be a biology major, a chemistry major, or something. And I get to the physics section, and the blurb, it's all the stuff about the physics and what they do and what it's about. And at the very end, they said, "Oh, and by the way, physics majors, turns out, have the highest acceptance rate in the medical school." And I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna be a physics major." So, yeah, that's how I started. And but again, it was just luck. I really enjoyed it, and as I progressed, I found I just really love the way that physicists look at the world. I love the tools that they deployed to understand the universe, and I got deeper and deeper into that. And also there were some really good people. I was involved in some research as an undergrad. I was fortunate enough to connect with one of the professors who's very kind, allowed me to do some work in his lab as an undergrad, and I loved it. And so by the time I was a junior, I had completed, most of the pre-med curriculum, your organic chemistry and cellular biology, and I was like, I'm not doing that, and I stayed at Wake and did a master's, and then went on. But yeah, I look back, and it was like that blurb in the description, and then just being lucky enough to stumble across some really great people, and I ended up going down the physics path, and I feel very blessed to have found it. So yeah.
Is there anyone who comes to mind specifically when you say really great people or really great moments along your journey to your PhD in Nashville? Is there anyone that comes to mind, or a moment that was your aha moment of this is my path?
Oh, sure, to take it? Sure.
Yeah, we have so many students in the audience.
So it was, I guess it was when I was doing thesis research for my master's, and I wasn't sure I was going to do a PhD in it, but I just remember like working on this project, and it was very difficult. It was one of those. There was just a day where it worked. I don't know how else to describe it. It was. I just remember like literally getting up from my desk. I was writing. It was a code I was writing, and it just worked very. It just everything just came together. And I remember literally just pushing up from my desk, going on the hallway, and just like skipping down the hallway,
Yep.
like a little kid, being like, "Oh my God!" And just the feeling of like accomplishment, and the result was really interesting. So yeah, once I did that, I was like hooked, and I'm like, I'm gonna do this. And then I went on to do the PhD, and found more of that type of satisfaction. But yeah, I would say engaging, for the undergrads out there, engaging in research, even at the undergrad level is just so valuable. I mean, you really get a taste for it, taste for that life. And I don't know, it just clicked with me. I loved it.
Absolutely. And for any of our PhDs who are some defending in a few months from now, any words of wisdom, a final hurrahs to get them through those next few months?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's yeah, that's a tough one. So for those who are on the verge of graduating, I would just say, yeah, like bear down. I mean, it's one of those things. It seems so insurmountable. I remember being 6 months out, and on chapter 1 of my my dissertation, and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get this done. But you just write every day, and a little bit. If you can just get a couple paragraphs in, and or maybe a table or a figure or something, just chip away. My dad used to say that you it's a while ago, but he used to say you can eat in a Buick if you had to, if you just ate 1 tablespoon a day. So I kind of approach life that way.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, but just keep chipping.
Just keep chipping, slowly but surely. And
Mhm.
good luck to all of our UT Austin PhDs who are defending in a few months. We're thinking of y'all.
Yep.
So there's a quote that comes to mind. I'm not sure if we're able to take the PowerPoint back onto the screen. There we go. So while I was doing my, research and background on exciting trends right now in just all the various industries that Lockheed has a handprint in, and the power of Lockheed and impact that has been made over the last so many years, the employees that you've housed. And this quote really caught me, and it is Lockheed's mission. While no one knows what's going to change the world next, we're probably already working on it. And it's so true, right? I mean, we think of Apple sometimes when we're in the tech world, being stealth mode all the time and coming out, but rarely do we think of the impact that Lockheed Martin has had. And so with that, I just want to dive right in to tell us a little bit about Lockheed Martin.
Sure. So yeah, Lockheed is an interesting company. Now, I spend most of my time now engaging with external companies, so I've had to describe it many times, and this is how I found probably the most effective way to really communicate what Lockheed is and how they operate. So Lockheed is, a couple of just facts about it. So it's the biggest aerospace and defense company in the world. It's over 100 years old. There are about 110,000 employees, more than half of whom are scientists and engineers. It's a big engineering firm at the end of the day. I think in some sense, when people want to work with Lockheed, they have this vision, especially if you haven't engaged with them much, that it's like this 800-pound gorilla. Sometimes what people say, it's the 800-pound gorilla in aerospace and defense. But, the truth is that when you start interacting with Lockheed, it's really more like 800 one-pound monkeys, because each business area, and you have to think about Lockheed as just a bunch of programs. This program builds F-35, this one builds a radar, this one builds a satellite. All those individual programs are really more or less independently operating businesses. Actually, a good way to think about Lockheed for the university folks is it operates a lot like a university. where each, I mean, at least we used to say that every professor, was king or queen of her own domain. And that is, and there's certainly collaboration. Folks collaborate in the same department. Interdisciplinary collaboration is very important and goes on a lot. But at the end of the day, each professor sort of runs their own, enterprise. And Lockheed operates much the same way. So if you're engaged with, a radar systems business, someone in space might not have, will have no idea about you. So I've always said, like, there's many different ways to engage with Lockheed. It's really like a bunch of different companies that are sort of loosely coupled. Mm-hmm. And although we do try very hard to leverage our size, I wouldn't be discouraged if you get, if you try to interact with one business area in Lockheed and it doesn't turn out to work. It doesn't mean that there's no opportunity for you, because there's so many businesses, there's so many people, there's so much opportunity that you just haven't found the right, you probably just haven't found the right group.
The right group, the right person. Well,
in fact, yeah, and I should just say, for what I do as a tech scout, and I'm trying to engage companies. I've often described my role as almost like Match.com, mm-hmm. Or whatever the dating app of the day is. But my job is really to connect a company with the right group or groups within Lockheed. I feel like a switchboard operator almost. I'm trying to make this connection, and if that connection doesn't work, maybe that connection will. And there's so many. It's so big that the challenge is not making the connections. The challenge is like identifying the most valuable ones to make, mm-hmm. Oftentimes. So.
Well, and specific to your role and to the connections that you make, the dotted line, as you described it to us before, when it comes to technologies and then the venture arm and leg of Lockheed, how does Lockheed partner with universities and research labs around the country? And what does that technology alignment look like when it comes to a portfolio fit early on?
Yes, ma'am. Good question. So there's strong engagement with universities all over the country, all over the world. There are a set of universities where we have special relationships with. UT Austin is one of them, where there are broad, sort of blanket agreements, for IP and such that really enable people to work easily and quickly, low threshold to collaborate. There's a lot of ways of working together in terms of actual finance. So there's lots of internal funding for mm-hmm. Lockheed. So they'll do sponsored research. At a place like UT, where there is this MOU in place, this memorandum of understanding that enables this to be done very efficiently. If you want to work with someone and they've got funding, you can set up, the money can be transferred and the SOW can be set up like within a week. It's crazy how fast it can be done. There's other ways of working together. So there's a program for universities in particular that work with small companies and universities called the STTR program. These are great programs that enable Lockheed to be engaged.
What does that stand for, STTR?
Let's see. Oh boy.
I think
there's SBIR, STTR, the SBIR Small Business Innovative Research Program. And now I'm gonna blank on the STTR. But STTR specifically has to have a university. It's like an SBIR, but requires a university partner. Mm-hmm. But the whole point of these programs, these are special set aside funding to encourage small business and universities to engage with large companies to push forward technologies. So it's an innovation fund mm-hmm. That really encourages the technology to jump that gap from the university into the commercial space, where it's often, traditionally it's very difficult, right? There's all this great research going on, mm-hmm. in universities, cutting edge stuff that just is going to change the world, except that it doesn't get across the gap and it ends up just being great papers. It's programs like these STTRs, SBIRs that enable that to jump over the so-called gap. So those are great ways.
And those are,
Yeah,
I can't remember the STTR either. And I was just writing
yeah,
small technology transformation.
you know,
Yeah. Well, so SBIRs and STTR
right.
uh, grants funded companies by SBIRs and STTRs. Lockheed engages with those types of technologies who are funded by that type of government funding early on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what does that early on look like when it comes to engagement? I would love to just hear some of the types of technologies that you're really excited about right now.
Sure, sure. So I would say specifically with SBR, SCTR, I should say I work with our SBR, SCTR managers. There's managers in Lockheed that his full-time job is to manage these programs. So oftentimes when I meet with a company that is pursuing an SBR opportunity or SCTR opportunity, I will introduce them to the appropriate SBR manager, and then they will take care of the interactions. They can set up, again, letters of support.
Mm-hmm.
They can make introductions. They can do all the things that are necessary to support the SBR programs. In general, for SBIR, STTR, there's different phases. The early phase, the phase one, is usually very small,
Mm-hmm.
very modest amount of work can be done, and it's just for the company. As you get into phase two, phase three, there's much more money that's made available. So think like maybe $100,000 or $200,000 for phase one. You could have phase two and phase three can be, $500,000, maybe a few million, depending on the program. And these can have like a Lockheed Martin or another large company as a subcontractor. So these are a great vehicle because they enable the small company to be the prime. They're the ones who are on the hook for delivering the technology. It's their technology that's being driven. They're up front. Lockheed's the sub, and they still get to work with them, and there's money to enable that engagement. But it's the small company and their product that's being driven, as the focus. So those are great programs. I do a lot of that. I mean, I should say I route a lot of companies through the SBR as like an on-ramp into Lockheed.
Mm-hmm.
Again, once, as a small company, once you've engaged with Lockheed, once you've successfully executed a few SBR programs, and you've established a relationship with a line of business, with one of our programs, that's just the beginning of a relationship. Once the program is done, you can do the next. You can do another SBR program, maybe get into another, bigger program, like a program of record.
Mm-hmm.
Program of records are like, we call them, that's our internal phrase for them, but this is like F-35. F-35 is $1 trillion program of record,
Okay.
over however many years, 50 years or something, it's estimated to be $1 trillion, but, or a big satellite program or a radar program, whatever it is. If you want to get on-ramped into that, that's much bigger money, much bigger engagement, but it all traces back to that initial engagement. You have to align your technology, your focus, your product to the platform where you want to go, and it's a great vehicle to get that done. I guess that covers the SBR, but yeah.
Well, and so valuable to hear, because we have so many different researchers on campus who are working on SBIRs and STTRs right now. Being on the scout side for the venture arm and leg of Lockheed, and having such a deep background on the technical side, what are some of the things that you look for that alignment, for that dotted line into the submarine, as you were talking about? What are some of the due diligence things that you're looking for when it comes to that fit?
Yeah, right. So yeah, how to answer this? So because Lockheed is so massive,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, if you just started with, I'm going to look for technologies that could be of use somewhere in Lockheed, there could be 1,000 of me, and I would still be, every one of my copies would be full-time.
Yep.
So I have to have a priority. The way that I prioritize what technologies I'm pursuing, I've done this. Basically, I'm aligning my priorities with those of the CTO,
Mm-hmm.
who I report to. So I report to the chief technology officer in Lockheed. Now our CTO started recently. He started around the same time I did in January. He comes from DARPA. His name's Steve Walker. He's a former DARPA director. So Steve has come in with a vision that aligns to his strategic technology development vision, aligns to the DoD's, the Air Force in particular. So this is all, we're very much looking to equip the 21st century warfighter. So we are snapping our technology strategy and priority with the DoD. So you can look online. This is publicly available. That there's joint all domain operations. JADO is an important area. Things like 5G we see as an important commercial technology that's going to enable our mission. We are always going to make, we're making the assumption that we're not going to maintain the type of spectrum dominance that we've enjoyed in the past. So things like GPS, we won't be able to take for granted, right? Or even comms, we have to be very careful about how we, we have to be very innovative, I should say, as to how we deploy comm systems in order to maintain effectiveness in an environment that will be denied. We have to assume that our adversaries are going to be able to deploy much more sophisticated countermeasures. So yeah, these are some of the areas that I'm really focused on. As far as my background, so I've got a background in semiconductors, CMOS in particular, and so yeah, I'm very much interested. I've been very much involved in the Lockheed Martin corporate advanced electronics working group, and this is a big challenge for the U.S. We have more or less, at least in the foundry side, we have more or less stopped. We don't have any domestic foundry partners who domestically owned, who are running at the most advanced CMOS nodes anymore, right? So you've got Intel, which only makes its own product. You've got Samsung, which is Korean, and TSMC, which is Taiwanese. Those are the three most advanced foundries in the world. And yeah, so this is a big challenge for Lockheed. So yeah, I'm involved with that. That's another area that's very important. I think the DoD needs to have access to the most advanced electronics fabrication capabilities in a setting that can be trusted. And this is big concern.
And and something that I found just on my research of Lockheed is on the future focus side of things, the look ahead, if you will. AI and autonomy seem to be at the core of Lockheed's strategy. Are there any exciting AI and autonomy projects that you can talk about?
It's difficult to talk about ongoing efforts. I would say broadly that, I would say broadly the areas that are ripe for engagement in that space are in the AI space are explainability. So this, the notion of being able to not just have your AI system spit out, an answer or a solution, but actually be able to explain the reasoning behind it, combining sort of deductive or inductive reasoning engines with maybe classic deep learning or ConvNets or whatever the structure is. That's an important, we are actively engaged in looking for that capability. I think in a related area, we're interested in trusted AI systems. So whatever, so what I like to call semi-autonomous systems. So if you have, like, say, a manned platform, like a helicopter or a plane, and you want to have a AI co-pilot, there's a human factor here. It's very difficult to hand over controls. Especially, not just cruising along, but actually in an engagement, hand over a significant amount of control to an AI system. So there has to be So we are interested in finding and figuring out ways to enable trust, that in the AI copilot. There's also, I would say, we're also, again, in the autonomy domain, we're also interested in just flat out capabilities. So a good example of this is the most recent, this has been in the news, Alpha Dogfight, which was a competition held by DARPA, where some AI companies, including Lockheed, competed against like a real pilot, in a simulated environment, dogfighting, fighter planes. So yeah, I mean those are all systems that I would say are of interest.
Well, and a few years ago, Lockheed partnered with Boeing specifically for these DoD goals, to work with the DoD and more so with NASA. So what in the aerospace defense side of things, what is Lockheed's long-term dream when it comes to how it'll change the skies, and what are some of the high-level goals when it comes to working with corporate partners like Boeing and?
Right. So yeah, I would say. So this is interesting. This is a bit of a pivot for Lockheed, but it is. I can say that it is recognized at the highest levels of management, at the CEO level, that the only way that Lockheed is going to be able to maintain technological superiority, to enable to still provide those platforms to the warfighter that will enable an advantage over competitors and adversaries, is by teaming with commercial entities. It's just a fact that there's so much R&D, and that the R&D environment is just different than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, right? Lockheed Martin is a 100-year-old company. When I was a kid, the fastest chips you could buy, fastest computer chips you could buy, were ones you couldn't buy. They were DoD chips, and no one could get them. And then in the 90s, the fastest ones you could get were, your DEC Alphas, or, SGI maybe, or Cray. Today, the fastest chips on the planet are Intel. It's the commercial, the ones that you get that you get from the Intel used to not be the fastest by any stretch. So that's happening all over the place, and so in many different fields. So the degree, so it is recognized that in order to maintain an edge, these commercial partnerships are absolutely necessary. And so I think what I'm seeing is that Lockheed is going to have to figure out the best way to enable and scale out these partnerships. So I suspect that we will be, you're seeing this same attitude, the same embracing of commercial technology in the DoD side. So organizations like AFWorks, if people are familiar with AFWorks, is fully embraced, two-hand hug of this notion of embracing the commercial world, and fast contracting terms. I mean, all the things that traditionally turned off the commercial enterprises to working with the DoD. Traditionally it was always takes forever to sign a contract to get your money. The requirements are often really stringent. They've got weird, like, you have to like track all your hours for all your employees. I mean, it's all the stuff that's like super laborious. And AFWorks was like, we're not going to do any of that. We're going to have these new vehicles, these new contractual vehicles that are going to enable flexible R&D efforts for our purposes that align with your existing business, that are going to enable us to ingest this technology. And Lockheed is going to follow suit. I think Lockheed's going to do something very similar. I see more and more. I anticipate, again, from my perspective as Tech Scout, I envision having much more budget, frankly, that I can maybe start having some discretionary to provide seedlings. I've asked for it. We'll see if I get it. But it's a modest amount. I mean, for a small company, I've seen this already. 50K can go a really long ways with a small company, and so I think those types of activities, I think, are going to expand quite a bit. I see a rich future of collaboration for Lockheed. Or if not, then I don't know. Good luck. I'll have to find another gig.
Well, we have it on camera now. You've asked for
yeah.
discretionary
it's more
funds.
than just in.
No, that's great. And on the AFWERX side, absolutely. In terms of the turnaround on contracts, and AFWERX has been an incredible partner with the fact that they're, bring us your startups, bring us your technologies, and we'll help get you funded. On the contracting side of things, from a startup perspective, what is it like to contract with Lockheed Martin?
Yeah, so again, it depends. It depends on the nature of the engagement. So SBIR, in an SBIR context, you're the prime, and Lockheed is the sub in a big joint pursuit. I always say I have sort of a few different ways I engage. I always think of companies as either they're sort of maybe they're a venture investment candidate. So I'll bring them to our ventures group and see if I can identify a good story. There has to be good engagement with one of the lines of business. Say, this company is developing a key technology that's going to be critical for a program of record or programs of record, and you should take a stake in them. So that's sort of one way I operate, and I do that a lot. I work with those folks quite a bit. I'm not an investment manager, but I work with them quite closely. Another way is just again looking for joint pursuits. So there are one of the things about a company like Lockheed that does a lot of government work is a lot of the R&D is internally funded. A lot of it is externally funded. So there's what we call contract research and development, which comes from the government. So it could come from like a DARPA or Office of Naval Research, or the Air Force Research Labs, AFRL. So these are all external R&D funding. It's like the NSF, but coming from the DoD. And I also like to encourage these companies to team with a Lockheed Martin group. And if they're trying to move a technology forward, go talk to a customer, go talk to an AFRL program manager, and see if this aligns with their needs. And then they can work together, win that business. And again, if you can win business with Lockheed, I'll tell you that makes the managers very happy. So that's a great way. And then the last way is just as a supplier. So if you're not a startup, if you're a little bit beyond that and you have an actual product or service that's ready to go, I love those companies too, because I can find a customer within Lockheed that just will buy your product or buy your service. So those are all. I mean, there's many different ways. I should say, my goal is to just ingest the technology. I almost don't care how it's done. The venture team is great. They have a very hard job, very fun. That's a great team, by the way. Those guys have a blast. But they are only focused on companies that are investable. It's a fairly narrow range. I on the other hand, I don't care. It could be a 100-year-old company that's just now coming up with a product that's relevant for A&D, for aerospace and defense. Or it could be a university group that hasn't even incorporated yet.
Okay.
And everyone in between. If you've got something if you got a technology that it aligns with an important gap, then I want to talk to you and I want to figure out how to get that into the company. So. And
that was my next question, was what is that healthy balance of being at a specific stage, whether there needs to be a product or incorporation, or it's just coming out of a research lab, what motivates the investment group? But
Yeah. So okay, well, I can again. I'm not. I should caveat. I'm not in that group,
Mhm.
but I have a pretty good sense. So Lockheed Martin Ventures um, was rebooted about 3 years ago. They've actually become a lot more active recently. So you may not have heard of them doing much before 2017 because they were really passive. Right now they're very active. So what the strategy is for them is that they're looking primarily at early phase companies. So they're primarily looking for companies that are pre-product. They want to make a lot of small bets early, as opposed to taking a large bets
Mhm.
later stage. So they're not adverse to high risk. So they have the dual dual optimization, right? They have to find companies that are investable, meaning they have good on the finance side. There's a high opportunity for reward, the risk reward
Mhm.
profile. And then on the technology side, it has to matter to Lockheed. So I always say their job is twice as hard as a conventional VC, as a financial VC, as a standard VC, because a standard venture capital firm only care about making their money back. Um, the Lockheed Martin Ventures or any strategic venture capital has to not only keep their fund alive, because they were given a bunch of money, but no more. So if that money goes away, they're out of business.
Mhm.
So if they keep that alive, they need enough return in order to keep their fund alive. But they also have to have companies that are developing technologies that move the needle for Lockheed. So it's a hard job, um, to satisfy both those criteria. But it's very exciting, and they found some terrific companies. Some here in Austin.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Any that you can talk about yet?
Yes, there is a company. This is in the news, or this has been published. So there's a company in Austin called Mythic AI. It's an AI hardware company. They make chips that perform AI inference operations very efficiently. And yeah, Lockheed took a stake in them. But yeah, that's a very interesting company. But yeah, it's a very exciting group. They do
Great.
they're very fun to work with. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad we have a few here in Austin. That's
Yes,
exciting.
yes, yes.
So I think we're going to flip over production wise, everyone who's tuned in. I see a few questions coming in through the chat, and I wanted to make sure to get through all of them. Okay, and I think we're trying to figure out if we can actually have you come up on the screen and ask the question to your camera. So if you're tuned in and you want to come up on screen, we'd love to actually engage with you. That's why we're trying out this format right now. Kevin Landrip, I'm looking at you because you've written me a few questions, and so I want to, hey, how's it going?
Hey, Kevin.
Good to see you. Can you hear? Oh,
Yeah,
great.
what's going on, Ryan?
Hey, how's it going? Been a while.
It's good to see your eyes and neck.
I know, right?
I know we wanted to try to get the full body experience for this fireside chat, but Kevin, you have some great questions, so I just want to kick it to you to ask. I'll ask these questions.
Yeah, awesome. So you guys were talking about AFWorks, and we all know AFWorks has been really successful getting companies on phase 1 and phase 2. Now with the 2021 Strafi Awards that they've made, they at least have identified some companies that can potentially go to transition, but generally speaking, they're not getting a lot of good transitions to well, I wouldn't even say phase 3, to programs. So what do you think working with Lockheed through Lockheed Ventures or just through a program could do to help that company's chances of transitioning that product from phase 2 into a system?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, how do you fly the part? It's so hard. Yeah, I think this is going to be, the truth is that 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 for existing programs of record, it's always going to be hard. I think the customer is, in this case, the DoD, is getting better about it, especially organizations like AFWorks and then the Air Force. And that model, by the way, is being embraced, as you know, Kevin, is being embraced by other groups within the DoD. But ultimately, getting a part to fly on an existing platform like F-35 is always our marquee one, is so hard because change orders, the change order process for the DoD is so difficult. What I would say is the best way to get onto a platform is to get into the process early, right? So what you want to do is you want to be part of the process when they're defining the spec, when they're defining the specifications for the platform. Now, again, this has its own challenges, right? But it's so much easier to be on in the beginning, get engaged early, than it is to swap out a part later. And yeah, I think in terms of doing these upgrades, though, in terms of getting a part on, I think it's going to require additional flexibility on the customer side, and also frankly, and again, this is just a little bit inside baseball, but I've been doing this now for about 10 months, and part of it is going to require a cultural change within Lockheed. Sometimes I talk about the ARM folders, and that's, I'll set up a call, and it's with this great little company, and they've got this amazing little technology that I know is a fit, and I'm on Zoom, of course, and I look at the Lockheed program manager, and I see this, the arms folded, and it's and it's like they're not, culturally they're maybe not ready to engage. So yeah, I would say I think it's going to definitely require a cultural change within the DoD, some procedural changes within DoD. It's going to require some cultural changes for sure within Lockheed. And again, like the DoD, there are in the 801-pound monkeys that is Lockheed, some of the monkeys are more likely, more willing to embrace external collaboration than others. But I think as a trend, everyone's being pushed in that direction. And I can tell you that is being encouraged from the very top down. Our new CEO, our CEO is brand new too, by the way, new CTO, new CEO. The CEO comes from American Tower. He's new, and he is all about commercial engagement. And he's all about changing the culture to embrace that.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Good to see you. Okay, do we have a Seth LaRue? If you'd like to come on and ask your question. If not, I'll just oh, there we go. Hey, Seth.
Hi, I'll ask my less aggressive question. I was asking about how often these, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I was trying to ask how often you scout out companies and they lead acquisitions, because I really didn't understand, but it sounds like you just partner with these companies that you're scouting out. Is that correct?
So all the above. It runs from mergers and acquisition, which is the strongest engagement because that's where we just buy the company. Those are fairly rare.
Even
on average,
ones are they often smaller ones that you acquire, or is it usually bigger companies that you
all the above. Okay. So the
Okay.
last major acquisition, I think, was Sikorsky, which was 4 or 5 years ago. That's while I was at Samsung. But yeah, there is an active mergers and acquisition group within Lockheed. It's actually part of the same organization that Ventures is in. So I would say in the spectrum of engagement, on the far end is mergers and acquisition, where you're just bought. And then the next down is they take an equity investment through Ventures, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next down is, you're doing a joint pursuit for some some R&D program or whatever it is, a joint pursuit of some external opportunity with the government. And then the last one is just as a supplier, as a vendor. I introduce you, and you become, you give us your DUNS number, and we enroll you in the system, and then we buy your widget. That's the least, interaction. So I don't know. Does that answer your question? Were you sorry? Maybe I missed.
Yeah, that answers my question. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Seth. Do we have an Andy Salo? Andy Salo? And if not, Andy, I will read your question out loud. It's very specific, so I didn't know if you wanted to engage or not with Ryan. So Andy asks, what is the best way for an Austin-based AS 9100 electronic contract manufacturer to start working with Lockheed Martin?
Good question. Come talk to me. Yeah. So yeah, we work a lot. I mean, again, with the 800, monkeys, there's all kinds of opportunity for, I would say, appetite for that kind of work. So yeah, contact me and I can direct you.
Okay, Andy, we'll make sure that we send you his contact information. As a reminder, put your questions in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand in the room, and we'll call on you to come on live and ask these questions for Ryan. I would love to know just what you're excited about from an industry perspective of some of the different trends going on, whether it's in quantum information, synthetic biology, all of the different future-focused, up-and-coming verticals that Lockheed's slowly starting to look at a little bit more.
That's right.
But yes, I would love to just hear, we have an incredible quantum computing, as you know, over in computer science,
Right.
Few groups over there. And so what are some of your most excited things of those different industries, synthetic biology and quantum information?
Yeah, so I would say synthetic biology, synbio is that is an area that's right for development within Lockheed. Actually, our new CTO, that is relatively new CTO, when he came in, he mentioned that explicitly as one of his high priority areas. So, when he was at DARPA, he started a program office around biology, and he is absolutely convinced that this is going to be the new, one of the newest and most important, or I should say the most important of the new areas of the battle space. And I agree. So we have some folks that I've been working with. It's funny, in the 110,000 employees in Lockheed, I think I know all the biologists, and there's like 4 of them, but I know them. And yeah, there is, well, there's not a lot of, I would say there's not a lot of existing programs, at least by dollar amount. There's a lot of interest, and there's a lot of willingness to grow that out.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very exciting area. And when I say synthetic biology too, I'm talking about really, like materials development. Nothing even, not talking about like super soldiers, just fuels processing and said specialized materials. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. Another area I'm interested in, I also like that area because it's really out of my wheelhouse. I'm excited about learning more about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think 5G, or what we're calling 5G.mil, is very interesting. So this technology, I mean, everyone's hearing about it. You're seeing the commercials for it, and it's coming. It's maybe it's here already. I don't know. My phone says it's on a 5G network. I don't know if it's any difference. But in terms of really leveraging now the billions of dollars that are going into the 5G development space, I think this is really going to move the needle for Lockheed. Robust comms, secure and robust communications, and even radar. It's interesting. There's 5G technology I think is going to really the millimeter wave 5G work is I think going to have a big impact on our radar capabilities. So that's very exciting. Quantum is also very interesting. I think I must have mentioned to you, I'm a great admirer of one of your professors here, Scott Aronson. So I track that pretty closely. We are engaged with a few quantum computing companies, perhaps most famously or infamously, from Professor Aronson's perspective, Lockheed invested in D-Wave, which, there was some good learning there, if not actual, it didn't necessarily move the needle technology-wise, but yeah, I think going forward, there's just so much going on, and we are engaged with some of the more, I would say, conventional approaches for in partners for quantum computing. And that is very interesting. I don't know, personally, this is an area I don't know to what degree quantum computing proper will be as disruptive in the ways that people are claiming. But what I am interested in is, so for example, cracking RSA. I think it's going to be super hard. I think it's going to take much longer than maybe we have to worry about in terms of the time frame, a real RSA. Quantum secure encryption, I think maybe because RSA, to the degree that you believe RSA is secure, I don't know that it's going to be all that necessary. But the areas that I'm really excited about for quantum information more broadly are quantum chemistry. I think there's going to be some significant developments, especially with the latest hardware. I think we're really going to be able to move into some new areas in terms of predictive simulation for properties, materials, electronics, optics, pharmaceuticals. These are all going to be enhanced greatly by these new quantum systems. In my opinion, that's going to be the first killer app. Quantum sensing. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here now for sensors that are enhanced by some of these technologies that are coming online. And I've heard it said that Lockheed at the end of the day might just be a sensor company, that you could almost describe F-35 as just as a fancy platform for a bunch of sensors. We really do care a lot about sensors. So anything you can do to enhance that capability, we're interested for sure. So, magnetometers of course come to mind immediately, but really any type of sensing is of great interest. Yep.
Great. We have time for one more question, and Anthony Doe, if you are on and would like to come on and ask this question, because it's a really great one, and I feel like you have to ask it in person to Ryan.
Hi, hello. So I'm a senior aerospace engineering student at UT, and I've accepted a full-time offer as a F-22 systems engineer with Lockheed Martin. Yes,
Hey, congratulations.
Congrats.
Awesome.
And so I was wondering, as I prepare for my career with Lockheed Martin, what programs and technologies should I be on the lookout for?
Programs and technologies. Are you talking about?
Yeah, so I mean programs within Lockheed Martin and or specific technologies that Lockheed Martin is really interested in that I could prepare during my senior year or over the summer before I start with Lockheed, or just on my own time?
I see. So you're working F-22.
Yes.
That's great. Out in Palmdale?
No, in Fort Worth.
Oh, you're in Fort Worth. Okay.
Worth, yeah.
Great. Yeah, I would say, so F-22 in particular, sustainment is important. Bringing down the cost of sustaining those systems is a huge driver for that program. The going forward, I would look at, I don't know if I'm not sure what your interests are, but I know that for our fifth and now coming up on our sixth generation fighters, arguably the most important and most vulnerable component of the vehicle is software. So I would say anything you can do to sort of start getting into that software space, the validation and verification, the V&V problem for those systems, because the DoD has incredible, as you know, I'm sure, has incredible constraints on anything that flies on a manned aircraft. So when you start thinking about the software that has to be deployed, it's incredibly sophisticated. And unlike your phone, which if your phone crashes, who cares? You just reboot it. If the software on an airplane crashes, it's devastating. I mean, it can be, it's the margin for error is basically zero. So I would say in terms of the, again, this is my view, and I'm not part of Aero, but from what I've seen, it appears to be the case that the component of the aircraft that those folks are most concerned about is software. So I don't know if that helps or not, but yeah, let me put it this way. Software engineers at Lockheed have very safe jobs. That is definitely the case.
Thanks, Anthony, and good luck as you start.
Yeah, very good luck and congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
I'm sorry you have to move to Dallas away from Austin.
I'll be in Fort Worth right now.
Or Fort Worth,
You're
yeah.
in
No,
Fort
actually
Worth.
Fort Worth's pretty nice. Yeah.
Awesome.
But it's not Austin.
We're proud of you. Hook 'em.
That's great. Yeah.
So I think we're coming to the end of our time right now, but I just want to thank our incredible Cockrell School of Engineering production team for making this possible. Again, this kind of format is the first I've ever seen done in this way. Thank you all who have tuned in to hear Ryan and I speak through a plexiglass and through masks. We really appreciate it. And of course, to Ryan, thank you for being a University of Texas at Austin partner. Thank you for being a Texas Innovation Center partner. We are so grateful.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me
here in Austin.
Yeah,
So thank you. This video will be posted and we will send out contact information to all attendees after the talk. And we look forward to seeing you again in the future. Please stay safe in the meantime. Bye, everyone.